Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today I know we have a subject and a guest on that you're going to be super interested in, because we're going to talk all about how do you understand and work with and execute with AI? How does it become a part of what you and your team are doing? How's it not replacing you and your team, but how is it augmenting? And what are the right ways to think about it, put it into the goals, and literally execute it within the team? So, Maria, you've been in marketing for over 20 years. You're the CMO at Penny AI. You've been in everything that you can think of in marketing, very focused on revenue alignment. You got very interested in technology and specifically AI, and you're now even writing a course on AI, right? Tell us a little bit more than that kind of cursory level viewpoint there in terms of, kind of what you're doing in this course, and then what we're going to get into and talk about today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, really excited to be here, and thank you for an awesome intro. You absolutely nailed it. So the only thing I can do is maybe just expand a little bit on each. So just like you said, 20 years or so in marketing, very focused on kind of the B2B sales enablement, revenue pipeline generation, and brand side. And throughout that entire journey, what I've noticed that technology always is something that I can rely or I focused on to expand, whether it's the process or scalability, and also to evolve as a marketer. So when we talk about AI today, one of the things I've realized as I started digging into it is like, we've seen the shifts before. We've seen the shifts from all of a sudden marketing automation, where everyone used to do things manually, and now you can scale it to your niches within your marketing stack, to no longer, scheduling and timing your separate emails, to social media that just expanded the reach exponentially. And if you've missed any of those shifts as a marketing leader, you probably were falling behind. And if you've missed, move over to the websites, then your business disappeared within, a couple of years. So this is another one of those shifts. But I think it is very overwhelming right now, right? And AI as a focus was like, it's a much faster moving shift, and it applies to everything and anything along the marketing funnel. So it makes it complicated, exciting, but also something that as a marketer, you can't miss. And I think that's something that we're going to talk about today. Outside of it, just a quick mention, for the validation, I am CMO with Penny AI. We're also running with a complementary brand that's called Trend.io. And I run the marketing, brand, lead generation, sales alignment, and also experimenting with AI within the marketing scope in those companies.
Fantastic. So let's start out, because AI is both like phenomenally interesting and dead on scary at the same time, right? Because we're worried about it replacing our jobs. We're worried about it taking over the world, right? We've all read about, how like ChatGPT started asking questions about how to get into my own code. And so can you just kind of frame for us as marketers how we should even be thinking about AI? And just kind of dispel some of that, and give us a platform of like a solid ground to stand on here.
Yeah. First of all, let's acknowledge that there's so much hype around AI, and honestly, very little actionable, clear information, especially around AI and marketing. Anytime we read something, you rarely talk about like the machine learning or text synthesizing component. It's always under this general umbrella of artificial intelligence. As a marketer, imagine talking about, well, marketing technologies can create landing pages. Marketing technologies can automate emails. What does it tell you? Marketing technology overall, there's 3,000 different ones, each one for the unique application. And some of them might be platform combining application, but still within program. So just this general term AI, I think that alone creates so much confusion, because it creates this black box of something magical that's going to either replace me, take my job away, or do it better, and I don't know what it is. So like, that's a good start of just dispelling that myth altogether. It's not something magical. AI is like 10, 15 different technologies with different capabilities, different risks and limitations. And as a marketer, it is useful, and it's one of the first steps I would take to understand some of the subsets, right? Some of it is text generation, some Some of it is voice understanding. Some of it is learning and applying that learning without your control. Some of that is image or media generation. There are umbrellas under AI. So don't think about AI as this one magic button. Think about it as a set of technologies that are able to evolve by themselves and learn and improve. And then it's your responsibility or kind of your task for the next few years is to start small and pick just one chunk. And most likely it is probably ChatGPT because it is, so widely available and so kind of at your fingertips. So why not start there?
Well, that was my next question, right? It is so wide reaching, right? That it's almost limiting in terms of thinking about it, in terms of like, where do I start? What do I do?
Mhm.
So that's a good start recommendation, right? ChatGPT. But can you give us a start of an understanding of how, as a CMO, applying it in two different marketing departments with those two different companies that you're overseeing, how should we be thinking about starting? And how should we be thinking about our plans and how do we incorporate it in? How do we bring it into our team and all those kinds of things?
Yeah. So let's step back and start not so much from AI, but from the CMO position, overseeing the company strategy, the marketing resources that are applied, and then the development of marketing team and its capabilities. And in your role, AI can be applied or AI should be a focus within each one. So when you think about strategy, where are some of your gaps? Where could you use more efficiency or more maybe content output, maybe more optimization on the website? Where is it that you see is the quickest win? Once you understand some of the AI capabilities, and again, some of your gaps and where you'd like an improvement, can I rely on AI? Can we find a way to use AI for that specific purpose? Again, content is fairly easy, right? That's what everyone is talking about with AI application. But it could be some of the design items, maybe not your like top brand design, but your small explainers or your social media images that before your designer was going crazy generating for your social media manager. And now all of a sudden she can create several templates much faster based on some of the inputs and using the generative AI for like DALI and so forth. Or maybe it is your website and you would like to optimize the copy and you could never find the time for your SEO manager to go through each one. Well, guess what? Drop in the existing articles, find the way to expand them with AI or add some type of the updates or bullet points or summaries. Ask AI to provide the information and optimize tags and so forth. And there you go. You can probably smash through it realistically in less than a week, when before it would be like a quarter wide assignment for one person.
Yeah,
Right.
they
So
took up
where
that resource, right, for that whole quarter. Yeah.
exactly. So this is where you can find the application of the capability. And when you start thinking about it, you're back in your wheelhouse. You're thinking SEO, you're thinking content. It's no longer this black box, is find the way to apply it. But how do you do that? Again, if you maybe don't understand that, that's where you have to take accountability personally and also encourage and make it safe for your team to know it's like, yes, I'm not thinking of replacing you or you or you with, AI prompts. What I'm hoping is to get so much more of the performance and efficiency in some of the kind of mundane items. And I want to encourage you to learn how to structure the prompts, how to use tools. And I'm going to encourage you to take maybe a day a week to explore and experiment and learn about tools outside of ChatGPT that are available. One of the confusions right now is the extensions to ChatGPT, the new tools are like every day. If you get a newsletter, there's like a dozen new ones.
Right.
How do you keep up? Well, you keep up if you put some of the effort and you start selecting the ones that kind of seem reasonable, try them, test them, and then apply them. So it's kind of encouraging that focus within the team to start implementing it. In addition, maybe to this kind of area of focus that you want to explore first, right? So like
What's
that's your, yeah.
really interesting about that is, that reverses because people on the team are starting to use it, whether
Mhm.
you're asking for them to use it or
Yeah,
not, right?
absolutely.
So instead of making it something they're trying to do under the table and worry about it, that you're encouraging it and you're asking for them, we want to adopt it. We want to figure out best practices for adopting it. We want part of your responsibility for doing that testing, right? So that makes
If I can
perfect
just,
sense.
yeah, if I can
Yes.
just lean into what you said, best practices, because the promise of like all of a sudden, your website is getting optimized, your content is getting generated with one click, are still accountable for the quality. And part of learning is not just experiment, test, and do everything with AI, but understand the limitations, understand the risks. As a CMO, you have to be able to talk about the standard of output, even if you used AI. However you got there, the facts have to be checked. The copyright information has to be acknowledged if you're able to understand where this part is coming from. The limitations of copyright within using AI have to be understood, like from the image perspective and maybe from the text perspective as well. The fact that AI and ChatGPT can provide absolutely inaccurate and false answers, and even if their links are provided, you are the one responsible. Just any good editor, wherever this information came from, it has to be checked and validated. And also, it has to be reimagined maybe in some ways. Does it make the most sense? Should you request a different logic? So all of that is part of you setting up the standards and teaching the team in how this has to be applied, right?
Yeah. How
Whatever
to
resource
use
they've
it,
used. Yeah.
the prompts, like there are going to be courses, there are going to be people that are like, we're constantly now, what was the prompt? How did you do that? I'd love to
Mhm.
write that down, right? We're all like,
Yeah.
hey, could you share your prompts, right? But here's something that I'm thinking about. And it was an area that you went into, the overall, the areas that AI can help and apply. As a marketer, as a CMO, we think about strategy all the time,
Mhm.
right? And you went into, there's a big area in terms of analysis, right, that can be done with chat gpt, that just like that SEO audit that used to take manually forever, right,
Mhm.
we can get much better information, we can get much better research these days. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about strategy, it's getting from point A to point B, right? As a company, you're trying to maybe expand to a new channel or go into a different global area or maybe launch a product. So where you would rely and augment your strategic thinking is that type of brainstorming. I don't know how many CMOs you have on a daily basis that you can just shoot ideas and say, it's like, oh, I'm going to get into Asia. What are some of the ways I should get there? Or what are some of the books that talk about expanding globally? Can you give me the summary of this? Like, can you imagine the amount of time it would take you to prep and get this information? So if you're smart about prompting ChatGPT about helping you to strategize rightly, is, well, we're going to expand into the European market, and this is the type of the titles that we're going after. What are some of the key distribution channels, or what are some of the publications that talk about this? Well, boom, research is done. What are some of the dangers of going into this market that I should be aware of? And who are the key experts on this? Done. Like, try asking this from Google and you probably would get hundreds of pages that you would have to live through. Or if I have to present it to the board and I want to come across as a CMO with 20 years of experience for this strategy, give me 10 slides I should cover. Again, it's not that the 10 slides you're going to take and present it to the board, but you will get a structure from which you will start from. And you will get a structure with maybe some validation points and some of external use cases if you ask for that. Give me use cases of companies like mine with 100 people and 50 million in investment expending this. Give me the use cases. You'll get it. And then all of a sudden you have this. So I think one of the key skills that as a CMO we have to develop with this, and I think it's a key skill for any leader, is asking good questions, is being able to structure the query in a really specific way, knowing what do you want as an output. Again, it's no different than working with an agency, working with the contractor, working with an external team, where you will get some type of information, and the better you can structure the request, the more information that's key to the output you want you can provide, the better you're going to get, the better results. And then you have to keep your bar high as well and not accept something crappy and keep rephrasing it until you get something that you're really happy with. And that's, I think, the skill set as a CMO, as a leader, that you really need to work on with the tools that we have now available.
Yeah, we've all learned that the hard way, right? That the better the input you give in life, the better result you're going to get, right?
Yeah, and if there's a quick tip for using ChatGPT for whatever output it is do not think about it as a nice conversation. It's like, hey, ChatGPT, can you please give me a strategy for such and such? You will get a crappy generic response altogether. Think about it is if you're paying $15,000 to an agency and you're writing not a prompt, what's the word? And you're writing a specific request. You're outlining your markets. You're outlining the type of output you want. You're outlining the tone of voice that you want. Do that in bullet points. Do not write this as a conversation, even though it is a conversational AI. Write it overall as a very specific request with like line by line. This is the tone. This is the amount of letters and characters. This is the type of information I want. This is the type of references I want, and give me 3 versions. So as specific as you can, as opposed to this kind of back and forth conversation.
Very interesting. Can you do me a favor? Can you give us like we all want to hear a story about how this was applied, right? And how it did tremendous things, because we can intellectually understand everything that you're talking about. And we've all dabbled, right? We're all dabblers, right? We should be,
Yep.
right? If we haven't yet, we're irresponsible as marketers in this area. We've heard so much on it. But
Yep.
can you kind of give us some concrete examples, working with your teams in how ChatGPT has really helped as a leader in the output from that team?
Yeah, and again, let's look at just a small subset, and that's what I'm suggesting for you as a head of marketing to start experimenting with. So very early, at the same time as I started digging into structuring this course, my graphic designer, she started looking into the generative AI as a potential to provide some of the screenshots or provide some of the illustrations for one of our brands. And at the same time, as I mentioned, we're working with Span AI and Trend.io, building out the brand, building out a very different kind of product line while still having the same designer on the team. So it made sense for the brand that kind of was already developed with some of the imagery to use some of the social media applications to, rather than like always search for stock imagery, develop something unique. And she's like, oh, perfect. That's exactly based on the description of what DALL-E is doing. That's what I'm going to use. Great idea. Try using, asking for a girl holding a cup of coffee and drinking it in a cafe, and the girl is having 7 fingers and the coffee is looking nothing like what it's supposed to look. So this is like 5 months ago. It's like, yeah, I guess this AI is not so good, right? But she's an amazing again, designer and the person that has the desire to learn. So she started looking at, well, maybe there are other better tools. What is Adobe doing? By the way, if you just generate this image, there is no normal layers for things that you would get as you were developing or building an image as a designer in like Photoshop tools, right? Doesn't break up into anything. You can't move things around most likely. So then she realized that, well, Adobe is doing something that can generate images, but also will provide you with the layering capability. Great. And then 3 or 4 months later, we had the same task. And also she's keeping an eye on DALL-E doing like great investment, the newer versions of it, and they fixed the 6-finger issue, and they are a lot more accurate at generating images. And then we were able to produce an entire presentation, like PowerPoint deck for the introduction of one of the kind of core platforms, using imagery, both combination of the Adobe changing the layers, changing the colors into corporate appropriate colors, and also much better output. But she would never know, has she not tried it and not applied kind of the benchmark of knowing what to look out for, how to structure query now differently. And yeah, it saved her maybe a week worth of work, and being able to focus on a different brand as we were launching it was like everything absolutely new, brand new website, tons of work for her while still being able to keep up with the original business as well. So I think that's a great example and application of starting with something, very easily get discouraged, maybe, I'm a true designer, this is not working, let's wait for 2 years. And then still being persistent and trying and keeping an eye on vendors and technologists, and then coming up with the stellar output, and then having that experience behind her belt and being able to say, now this is how she's using it, and she'll push it further too into other applications.
What this is making me all think about, and that was a great example, by the way. Very visual, 7 fingers. And
we had a good laugh as a team, like looking at that.
But what this makes me think about, like, is as CMOs, we're constantly evaluating. We've got like this big tech stack, right? I
Mhm.
just talked to a woman she was at Prudential and she had a tech stack of over 100. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So part of what we're going to have to do is have this plan for how we're going to start testing and rolling it out and trying in this area and that area. But there's also going to be the tools that we don't just kind of use ourselves. There's going to be the AI companies,
Mhm.
right, that do phenomenal things. We had a
Mhm.
gentleman on, a month ago that was at AI listening company, and he could tell you, for you and your competitive set, what were the main subjects and topics that were interesting for your buyers,
Mhm.
where there was thought leadership, where there wasn't, right, where there was a gap, where there wasn't, where there's an opportunity, where there
Very
wasn't,
cool.
like amazing stuff. So part of what I'm thinking is the role as a CMO is we're going to have to what are the tools that we're going to be using as a team, but also what are the new tools that we're going to be using and partnerships that we're going to be creating, you know, with companies that have very elaborate, data sets and things that they're looking at and using AI in order to help us make better decisions.
That's a great question, and it's actually kind of picks up on the layer that we haven't touched upon. Um, there is an AI that is the tools that are easily available. And the reason why we're all talking about AI right now is because ChatGPT made it so easily accessible, right?
Right.
And kind of blew up this whole layer of technologies with AI were available. It just wasn't this that easy to just ask for a poem to be written or ask for a blog post by a CEO to be written. And there you go, marketers. Look, 5 blog posts on the topic that I wanted from you forever. So like all of a sudden that became so accessible. But then there is an enterprise AI which companies had been working on for 10 to 20 years. And it has to do with your own data and being able to make better decisions and better conclusions based on the data. And that takes a lot more preparation and alignment with your operations team, with your data team. And not every company even has the amount of data that's required for machine learning algorithms to work. It's actually
Right.
tons and tons of data. So if you're in B2C and you have user or customer data for hundreds of thousands or millions of users, then it's a like good amount of data set. But if you're a startup and you're working with 10 companies and you want to just use your own data set to learn, even if you have like a couple thousand users, not the best use case scenario. So, right, like you have to understand where it is applicable. Um, and then AI, not so much as this output and synthesizing AI. And that's where we talked about, like kind of fundamentals and understanding which AI is applicable to where.
Right.
This is, and when we talk about decision making, this is the machine learning applied to your own data set. The conclusions are relevant to you exactly, not some kind of general information out there as you would do the Google search. It's more as like you get into your own Salesforce and you dig for knowledge. Well, all of a sudden it's going to be available to you, right, if you structure the queries, but it's very dependent on your IT and operations team. It's also can take 3 like years of work to prep your data. And if the data is bad, guess what? The output is going to be really bad. And then if you're going to automate that, it's just going to get worse. So as a CMO, that's where you make alignments with your overall executive team and say, can we improve? Can we really scale our business if we're able to derive those conclusions? Me as a marketer, I'm going to understand what customer niches and categories we have, and I can nurture them so much more, or I can make conclusions for the forecast so much better. You as a sales team can probably figure out the forecast so much better as well. And you as an operations
Mhm.
team can see some of the potentials for savings. We're going to aggregate all the data and invest as an executive team because we understand what it is going to do to our company. And we've seen some amazing examples, right, like from Amazon to some of the larger companies, to PepsiCo, which is not necessarily the strategy but like amazing use of generative AI and DALL-E in their advertising, and they're like the first ahead of everyone generating their songs, with the idea that it's going to like cause this exact emotion in those types of people. So there is like advanced usage and there's
Right.
somewhere we can all start. Yeah. I don't know if it
Well,
was the right answer, but I think understanding that not everything is ChatGPT, that there is an enterprise AI that can be developed within your company. As a CMO, you can be part of the executive group that can promote it, and you need to understand what it does and what context you have within your company is also really important. And it's also a capability to move your company forward.
you know, I know we could talk another couple of hours here. I know we could. But if there was of everything that we've talked about here, if there was a takeaway that you wanted us to have as an audience, that you're like, if there's one thing to remember from this in AI as a CMO, what would that be in your mind?
It would be to start thinking about AI and to reframe your view of AI into something that's going to augment your capabilities and your team capabilities, and start looking for opportunities to explore it and to apply it in very small segments. So stop
Mm,
thinking about AI as this large umbrella and black box that one day your team, will start applying. Is start thinking about it as a tiny little bit of improvements and time savings that your team can leverage, and trust them and
mm,
encourage them
mm.
to apply it, and also trust yourself to start using those small bits and pieces, almost like running sometimes actually is a good suggestion, something you're going to do on your own. Run it through ChatGPT as well, and then combine the output, like almost develop the habit of using it side by side and seeing where it can get augmented. And also look for some really good prompts and start collecting the prompts and exchanging it within your team. So make it a culture, make it fun, make, every once a month presentation of someone using ChatGPT for like 10-15 minutes. And then you will feel so much better and so much more, just unafraid of this thing and being just in the front row there.
Well, so much to think about here. If people had follow-on questions, would LinkedIn be the best place for us
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
link up
Maria
to your
Osipova,
profile?
Penny AI. Yep, please connect, please ask questions. It's another, again, we were talking about developing this within the team, developing the network of people that are curious about AI, that are applying AI, and then finding the way to exchange those either stories or tips. Like, throughout my marketing career, one of the best things I've ever done was develop that group of revenue marketers and sharing investment into technology. Should we go with this vendor? AI is very, very similar. What are the best prompts? What is the best project that you've done? And keep doing that. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving us kind of a bigger picture and way to start thinking about this and applying it in our own departments.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for raising the topic. I think it's really, really important one.